What up is Marcus with Dynasty Football Dads. We are actually going to be going through the 2021 wide receiver rankings. But before that, we are going to be giving away a free Brandon Ayuk jersey. So if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. You get a chance. All you have to do is subscribe, and then you get the chance to win the free Brandon Ayuk jersey. All right, so not a lot of things, again, are changing from now until we get to kind of their pro day type stats for rookies, or until free agency hits here. There's a lot of things that are not really moving. We're kind of in this stagnant time. So I figured this is a good time to go through 2021. You could say quote unquote redraft rankings, but you can utilize this for who you think is going to be the best for 2021. And the first player I have on 2021, my big board, you could say, is going to be Devonta Adams. I mean, he's had 10 plus touchdowns in 4 of his last 5 years. He was the #1 fantasy wide receiver in 14 games last year. I mean, ultimately, there's not much to say besides he's an awesome wide receiver. He's a safe wide receiver. And if he stays healthy, he's going to be a top 3 wide receiver. So that's Devonta Adams. I mean, that's pretty easy. All right. Well, let's go to another player that I have in that same tier, which is Tyreek Hill. He's 27.5 years old, which is perfect prime age to continue to do what he's doing. He's a top 4 wide receiver in 3 of the last 4 years. So you're looking at safety, awesomeness. You have a great quarterback. Yes, Kelsey's going to get a little bit older, so maybe even Tyreek Hill gets more of that. And even if they get a Corey Davis or a Will Fuller or somebody in free agency, Tyreek Hill is going to still have this amazing production. He's had over 9.5 targets a game in the last 4 years, and he's had 47 touchdowns in 57 started games. Should have had 48 if you saw that catch where he was on the ground in the end zone and the ball just kind of landed in his arms. But anyways, that's beside the point. Tyreek Hill, #2. And then we're going to end a tier right here. So we got Adams, we got Hill, and then my third guy in the tier 1, we have Stefon Diggs. He was my former Viking. In fact, yep, right there, we got a Diggs jersey. So yeah, it's a Vikings jersey, though, not a Buffalo Bills jersey. Anyways, he led the league in receptions and yards in 2020. He had 6+ receptions in every game but one. So you're looking at extreme consistency with Josh Allen, and I can't see that getting worse with being their sophomore year together, their second year together. And again, he had over 10 targets a game. We're talking about a guy who's heavily targeted. And even again, if Buffalo gets another wide receiver, I think that's only going to help the offense. And I think that's only going to help Stefon Diggs get more open. We saw Gabriel Davis start to break out in some different games. We saw Cole Beasley take over in some games. But guess what? Stefon Diggs still had his chunk. He still had his target share in his pie. So we're going to have those 3 as tier 1 wide receivers. Now we're going to go into tier 2 here. And tier 2 is kind of a bigger tier just for the fact that I love a lot of these wide receivers. And there are a lot of young, great wide receivers. And we're going to start with A.J. Brown. And why do I have A.J. Brown there? He is a monstrosity of a human being when it comes to running people over and yards after catch, yards after contact. He had 1,000 yards on back-to-back seasons. He only started 11 and 12 games, so yeah, you can talk about injuries being an issue for him, but when he's on the field, he's getting almost 100 yards a game. It's amazing what he can do, and he's had 19 touchdowns in 2 years. I don't think that anything's going to really change in that offense. It runs through Derrick Henry, and in the passing game, it runs through A.J. Brown, and nothing is going to change about that, and that's why I think Tannehill is a decent enough quarterback to continue to produce with A.J. Brown, and A.J. Brown was amazing every single game that he started. He just needs to get healthy from those knees that he had an issue with towards the end of the year, but still produced amazingly with 2 bad knees. It's crazy. Anyways, #5 is going to be DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins is a crazy stat. He's had 10,009 yards in 8 years. So we're looking at over 1,000 yards receiving every single year on average. And he's had 5 top 10 wide receiver finishes. And ultimately, he's had some wide receiver top 5 finishes as well. We're looking at a guy in Arizona's offense that he was a target monster, a yard monster, just didn't get the TDs. And ultimately, I think that the touchdowns will come for DeAndre Hopkins. And if you see him go from like a 6, 7-ish to like a 10, like you're talking about a guy who can ultimately get back into that top 3 wide receiver finish or top 4 wide receiver finish in that Arizona offense. My #6 though is going to be the Diggs replacement is Justin Jefferson. Skull for any of you guys. Anyways, he's 22 years old. He had 1,400 yards and 7 touchdowns. That's despite being a not really great wide receiver. No, I shouldn't say not great wide receiver. He wasn't utilized in the first 2 games. He just wasn't. And 7 of his last 14 games, he had 100+ yards. Okay, I can say that. So 7 of his last 14 games, 100-plus yards. We're talking about extreme high upside here. I mean, this guy was ultimately taking over Adam Thielen at the #1 position, and he is extremely talented as well. We're talking about a rookie year that, he was breaking records. No one's had 1,400 yards in the Super Bowl era until Justin Jefferson receiving. So, and he had 7 of his last 14 games had 10-plus targets. So we're talking about half his games, 10-plus targets, 100-plus yards. We're talking about a guy who I think is going to easily be a top 10 wide receiver again. Anyways, number 7, this is where we get controversial because his past is very limited, but his future is, I think, amazing. And I've already had people say, oh, you have him way up there. You're overrating him. I am not projecting the past. I am trying to project the future. And I want somebody that I think is going to be a wide receiver, potentially top 5. I think he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver in 2021. That's why I have him here. It is CeeDee Lamb. And CeeDee Lamb had 935 yards and 5 touchdowns, which doesn't look amazing, but we want to project where the sophomore breakout's going to happen and potentially where his third-year breakout's going to happen. And I don't think he's going to be one of those wide receivers that has a third-year breakout because he's already broken out. I think it will happen. He had almost a 1,400-yard pace with Dak Prescott. It was 1,386-yard pace. We're talking about a guy that I think easily you could look and say, oh, 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns or 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns. You could look at that and go, oh, wow, he was a top 10 wide receiver this year. And I think he's going to fully take over into that wide receiver 2 spot in Dallas. And actually, why I have him above Amari Cooper is because I think he is the best option. And if you saw some of his amazing catches last year with Ben DiNucci at quarterback and Andy Dalton at quarterback, I think if you just watch the tape, he's amazing. We just need more of him, and we need him to actually have a competent quarterback, which I believe Dak will be back, and I believe CeeDee Lamb will be back, doing better than ever. All right, anyways, DK Metcalf is going to be my number 8. Again, all into this tier. The problem with DK Metcalf, if you look at his fantasy finish of number 5 in 2020, and you look, wow, that's amazing. Again, how I just said that I wanted CeeDee Lamb to have 1,300 yards and like 9, 10 touchdowns. Well, DK Metcalf had 1,303 and 10. But what happened was 6 of his last 8 games of DK Metcalf were under 62 yards. That's a problem. That is a huge, huge problem. DK Metcalf and Russell Wilson just took a nosedive the last half of the year. And so we're looking at a huge risk because DK Metcalf is somebody that I still really like. And if Russell Wilson's gone, that's a huge problem as well, and DK Metcalf goes down. But my biggest strategy for DK Metcalf is drafting him, and then 4 or 5 games into the season, I'm looking to flip him for one of these other wide receivers above him, whether it's CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson. Maybe Dak is taking slow time to get back, and he's just not producing as well. I want the CeeDee Lamb, or I want the Justin Jefferson, or DeAndre Hopkins, or whatever it is. But DK Metcalf here, I mean, at this point, man, that guy's a beast. He's a monster, and I want DK Metcalf at number 8. And number 9 is going to be Calvin Ridley, excuse me. So Calvin Ridley, 1,374 and 9. He was a fantasy finish of number 4, right ahead of DK Metcalf, and he had 8 games over 100 yards. Ultimately, he was taking over the new number 1 spot over Julio Jones. I think Julio will be back, which is why I don't think Calvin Ridley will be a top 5 wide receiver. But I think Calvin Ridley finishes into this like 8-9 area, this 8-9-10 area. And we're perfectly happy with Calvin Ridley. I think he ends up having a little bit less yards, maybe like 1,200 yards, and maybe he has like 8-9 touchdowns. And we're like, wow, that was a really good season by Calvin Ridley. But ultimately, it's not going to be like the 1,413 touchdowns or something like that. He's not going to be a wide receiver like 2-3 in my eyes. And then number 10, this is where we cannot let him drop any further. It's going to be Michael Thomas. Will it be Taysom Hill quarterback? Will it be Jameis Winston? Will it be other? I don't know. Maybe comment below what you think his quarterback's going to be. 1,100 yards. He's at 1,200 yards. He's at 1,400 yards. He's at 1,700 yards. And then he's had just crap for yards. So he was 9-8-8-1, 103. What is the outlier? 103. So where do you think he's going to be? Well, if you take, let's just say, have you ever done the math of like I think it's like the pie chart, or it's like the standard deviation chart, where you take the high and the middle, and it's like the mean, median, yeah. So it's like you take the high and the low one, you take it off, and then you take the other 3 and you average it, whatever. 1 and 103, we'll just erase those. We'll pretend like 1 didn't happen and 103 didn't happen, and you have 9-8-8. Well, I have him ranked at 10. So where do I think he's going to finish? Well, probably between 8 and 9 and 10 and somewhere around there. Like, you could see him being there and you're not extremely excited about everything, but you're not disappointed either. You're like, okay, well, he finished with 1,300 yards. And again, he finished with maybe 7, 8 touchdowns. And you're ultimately, if you draft him way higher or way lower, you can be either happy or sad, and that's where I have him. So Michael Thomas, he's going to finish out the top 10 here for wide receivers of 2021. So if you're new to the channel and you like the channel, please subscribe. We're going to be giving away a free Brandon Ayuk jersey here. All right, here it is. All you have to do is be a subscriber. We're going to randomly give it away at the end of March. All right, this is Marcus with Dynasty Football Dads, doing just a little bit of redraft stuff here today. Peace out. Take care.